I was in drunk school, inpatient rehab in L.A. Now, the science changes, so allow for that. This is 1992. And I'm green as the grass. I was brand new sober, and I'm in a Q&A session with a very accomplished physician, West Coast addiction specialist, MD, great guy. And I had read somewhere in the recovery literature the phrase, the alcoholic mind. I said, what's that mean? And it was, that's not something they use much. That was in the 1930s when that was written. I'll drop the imitation of the guy, but he said, yeah, back in the day, they were trying to figure out what made an alcoholic and study personalities. And they kind of had going in an assumption schoolyard bullies or something like that might be more inclined to be alcoholic. And what they found is about 10% of schoolyard bullies were alcoholics, and about 10% of mathematicians were alcoholics, and about 10% of car mechanics were alcoholics. And he said the only thing, and I don't know if this holds up, but the only thing that was a little off the scale was creative types, artists and performers and graphic artists and that sort of thing. And I don't know what to make of that, because you're I
don't either.
You got any feelings about being sober and being in the arts, or being the likelihood of being a drunk and being in the arts? That topic?
Except extremely lucky. Sometimes I wonder, like, how I got into alcoholism. I know how I got into music. I was just fascinated. I had a sister who was 7 years older than me, and so she was coming up in the 60s with Rolling Stones and Beatles and Bob Dylan and everything like that. And, being like 7 years old and looking at these record covers, I was just fascinated and listening to them. Yeah. And I was just fascinated, and I was so drawn in. I really gravitated more towards the Rolling Stones. And then when I was able to read books, and then I just started reading about like debauchery and this kind of stuff. And so I don't know if that kind of took me off, on the exit towards drinking and using, and this is what you need to do to be creative.
Did it have to do with pre-show butterflies or after-show come down, any of that stuff?
No, it was 24 hours a day.
All right. And
it was you know how it is. It's just all encompassing.
I was steady Freddy. I was high all the time. I never put any thought into, well, if I get sober, I won't play as well. I hear people worried about this. I just never thought about it. I just did my thing and got away with murder until I couldn't.
I was on the way over here. I was thinking, I didn't know what we were going to talk about or how this was going to go. And I started thinking about the first time that I played without anything in my body.
Let's talk about that. That's good.
My God, man. It was like the blinders came off. I was very nervous, like going into it and just seeing people and people saying, why aren't you drinking and stuff like this.
Big show, Little Dive. What kind of a scene was it?
A club in the city where I lived at the time in Raleigh, North Carolina.
Okay.
Like 300 people.
Yeah. Okay.
But man, I played that night, and after I finished playing, it was like I heard things in a completely different way, and I was actually listening to other people, because a lot of times I would just have to struggle to like make sure I'm not like going off the rails. And it was liberating, and it was just, and I really enjoyed it.
Did you notice, because I did, first handful of shows sober, the load in and sound check at 3 p.m. and the load out at midnight or 1 a.m. The shit looked exactly the same. Yeah. Like it didn't have that glow on it. The torn upholstery with foam hanging out and the weird looking people and the smelly trash cans were the same in the afternoon as they were at 1 a.m. That was new. That was new to me. The sort of that sort of blanket of glitter or something that gets laid over a club as the night goes on. That didn't happen.
Well. And, sometimes, and I'm not eaten up with regret, but sometimes I'm just like, man, I wish I would have gotten sober earlier, like a lot of people. But we are where we are, and I wouldn't be who I am if things were different, and that's how it is. But, I mean, it is just life. I was able to listen to other people.
Sure.
Instead of just thinking about me. I was able to play more as an ensemble. You dig?
Of course, no. I'm chiefly a rhythm player, so I live locked into the snare drum more than anything else. more than anything else, I find myself walking over and looking at the snare drum and just kind of, that's the heartbeat that I wrap my arms around. And I don't know what that was like high. I probably was terrible, if you really pull out hit the solo button and listen to exactly what was going on with me all night, it was probably a damn mess. How could it not have been? Because I was high. But your perceptions are also screwed. It's like thinking you can drive and you can't bloody drive. It's the whole thing goes to shit and you don't know it. I do know this, Brad, that the first, I had screwed things up royally by the time I got thrown into a hospital. I had burnt the bridges. And when I got sober, one or two people that loved me personally kind of gave me little opportunities to sit in. And I remember that a guy I had to do a very embarrassing amends to totally said, "Oh, don't worry about that. I'm just glad you're not messed up anymore. And by the way, my band is playing, this is out in the valley somewhere." He goes, we got a show and you want to sit in? I don't remember if I was playing the whole show or if he just pulled me up for a couple tunes. But I remember this. I went out there and it had sort of a theater marquee, and the marquee didn't have the name of the band, didn't even say live music on weekends, like that. It said open 6 a.m. Now that's the kind of bar this was.
Right.
A very high class clientele. Someone's got their nose against the glass at 5:45 waiting for their first beer. Oi.
Well, when I first got sober, I was in a band and we had been signed and we had our first record was coming out and we were going out on a tour just, in a van, but all across the country for like 6 weeks. And I think I had been sober about a month. And so this was in 1997. So it wasn't that easy. Payphones.
Right. And to stay in touch with sponsors and stuff wasn't that easy? Is that what you mean?
I had a couple numbers. I didn't go to any meetings.
Right.
But I just did what somebody told me, which was wake up every morning, ask God to keep me sober, and then at night thank God for staying sober that day. And that's what I did. And it was also kind of strange since I wasn't loaded and we were playing some kind of just crappy gigs where our band wasn't right for this room. And
sure.
Why are we playing this Fern bar when we're loud as hell? After a while, like everybody, I didn't tell anybody that I had quit drinking. But then people started noticing after a while.
Okay.
Nobody really said much about it. And, at this point, we were all like, 3 people in one hotel room. And I'd play, load my gear up, get out, and I'd just go back, to the hotel and hang out and maybe go to the payphone and call somebody.
I see.
And I roomed with another guy who was my kind of chief comrade when we were going out using, and drinking. And he would come in a couple of those nights and, just literally be like falling down drunk in the bathroom, pulling down the...
Sure.
And I was just like, man, that would be me right now.
Okay.
And I'm glad I'm not there. And the last show that we did, we left North Carolina, went all over the country. And I went to like some towns where I knew people and that I used to drink heavily with. And I was very nervous, like in Austin. I remember going there and I saw some guys from a band that we had been touring with and, they wanted to buy me drinks right away. And I was just like, and I was praying, walking across the street, going to the club, like, God, please keep me sober. And I just said, I'm not drinking tonight. And the guy said, oh, are you on the wagon? I was like, I guess so. And he was like, yeah, that's good. I should be too.
Yeah, sure.
And also, like in Los Angeles, had some friends. But I made it through that whole, 5-6 weeks or something. And my brother drove down from North Carolina. As soon as we finished playing, I jumped in, he drove my car down there, and we drove all the way back to North Carolina. I just had to get away from everybody.
I see. Okay.
And it was a big deal. And after doing that, I was like, this really works. I can stay sober in any circumstance. Because that was on our rider, a case of Heineken this kind of stuff. So just doing that, it was, at that point, I felt that was the most accomplished I'd felt in my whole life.
Okay.
About anything.
I just find, and I think it's an era, it's to do with the current day, people are so cool about, there's people that are picky about gluten and sugar, and there's 1,000 dietary restrictions and I'm on this diet or that diet. And mostly people aren't worried at all about what's in my glass. I don't remember ever anybody going, come on, you got to take, I have not experienced that. Maybe other people have. And what I have done one time, and I think if you stay sober long enough, it's going to happen to you. I was at a family get-together that I didn't want to be at, my then wife's in-laws kind of deal. And I set down my silver Diet Coke, turned my back on it for a couple seconds, reached over and picked up a silver Coors Light.
Right.
And it hit my mouth, and I don't think I quite sprayed it out, but I may as well have done. And I like to say, if I ever relapse, it won't be on Coors Light. Let's put that. It's going to make the evening news. And so I do think that you're liable to get served something you didn't order, bite into a dessert, and go, "What is this, half rum?" Yeah. Something crazy like that. But
that's happened to me too.
Grabbing the wrong. I've developed a trick of folding I'd order club soda or whatever is American Diet Coke, fold a drinking straw in half and poke it down in there, and just kind of marked my drink, and I never had a problem. And the other thing is, my flashy days are well behind me, and so the gigs I've played sober, I've been toting my own amp, and I've been pulling my own vehicle up and trying to keep my guitars safe and all that kind of stuff. And you got so much to do and so much to think about, and I'm a set list chord chart guy, so I'm trying to find tape and a place to put stuff up on the backs of cabinets and stuff like that I am not out front flirting with girls and buying drinks and trying to keep, I'm really, really busy doing blue collar shit before and after a show.
Well, that's what it is. I mean, it's a job. And, my whole life I didn't want any responsibility. And I don't know if that was part of the reason I played music and got into drugs, because I didn't want any responsibility. And that probably had to do with something with my upbringing. Because I was going the opposite direction of my father,
Okay. What did Dad do?
I never really quite knew when I was growing up what he did. He was in business, quotes, and he was like a management type of person.
It's like Ozzie and Harriet or Ward Cleaver. They're just going to the office.
Yeah, he went to the office. I wasn't really sure what he do. He was, in management at corporations, but he always, I just didn't want to be, like that. But I was getting back to that time in early, very, very early sobriety and going out and playing and being around people and being around in bars. Because we weren't a big band. We were playing in bars.
Sure.
I didn't really know how to go to meetings, and I didn't have a ride. I mean, we had a van with a trailer on it. I'm not going to be driving around Minneapolis looking for the clubhouse with this gigantic rig. And I didn't go to, and I love getting meetings, and things got better for me, professionally, and I was traveling a lot more and traveling, to different continents and everything. I tried to go to meetings all the time because, they're just...
Never have done that overseas.
It's so great, and...
English-speaking meetings, non-English-speaking? What did you find?
I've always found English-speaking meetings, but in a lot of different countries. And I have gone to, maybe I went to a German-speaking meeting one time, but I didn't go to a meeting that entire time. But I did have the 24-hour-a-day book or something like that I bought in a Barnes & Noble in Ann Arbor, Michigan. It was powerful, man, to go that time, to do what I had always done and to not slip and to not drink. I mean, that just proved to me that this worked.
You bet.
Yeah.
There's a funny thing about airplanes, too. Don't you find that when you get 8 miles, I've heard a lot of slip stories in meetings of things that started on an airplane.
Or in airports.
Yeah. Yes. But I do know that here's a weird random memory. I'm 8 miles high, flying somewhere to somewhere and reading one of those stupid in-flight magazines. And there was an article about some village in Spain that goes batshit once a year with tomatoes. They have a tomato festival where they cook with them, they throw with them. The streets are running red with tomatoes, and the drink of the moment during that tomato palooza is a little hollowed out cherry tomato with a shot of tequila in it. They pop it. And I'm years sober. I read that. Well, I could probably do that. What? I don't know if it's the thin air up there, but it didn't last a half a second. But the fact that would go through my brain, considering what I've been through, is completely nuts. And but also one time I was reading my tattered old big book, and an attendant lady was walking down the aisle, plopped down next to me and said, "Oh, my sponsor's got me working on page 101, whatever the hell." and we got into this animated conversation about recovery with a perfect stranger. Never would have happened if I hadn't been busting out the literature. It's kind of a secret handshake that's cool. Or when you hear somebody say in otherwise innocent conversation, well, it's progress, not perfection, something like that. You're like, right. Mm-hmm. Or I had one guy, something you said tripped this memory. I was working on a movie in Austin. About the third or fourth time I went out socially with one of the actors, he noticed I was ordering club soda or something. He goes, "You don't drink?" And I said, "Huh." He goes, "Never?" I said, "Huh." And he goes, "I bet you used to." I said, "Yes, sir." And he goes, "Yeah, you guys that don't drink anymore, you bagged your limit, didn't you?" Like, "Yeah, you got me." That was funny. Because it's just true. I cashed my privilege a long time ago, and those are the days, and no mas. It's not that big a deal.
Well, these days, it's so easy with the internet and your phone, and I can find meetings everywhere, and they even have apps for all this stuff. And there was like...
Well, Brad, how about you and me? I cannot believe I was never in the same room with you until a couple of days ago. Right. I've known you. I've talked on the phone and Zoom meetings 100 times, and it's an illusion of having been around you. I've never been around you. It's crazy.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, I've... just getting back to going to meetings on the road, there's like people that I've met in Germany, like when I first went there to do some work, like, 12 years ago, 13 years ago. And I found an English-speaking AA meeting in Berlin. And I'm still friends with several of those people that I met at that first meeting. It's just been really wonderful. And a guy from Paris that I met. And there's another time I tried to find go to this meeting. And I guess it had closed, but hadn't been, marked off on the book or whatever.
Yep.
And there was another guy out there waiting. And this was in England. And so me and him just got together and went and walked and got some coffee.
Oh, come on. That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. 2 drunks and a resentment. That's all it takes. You got a meeting. That's fantastic. I do. I remember what are they called? Meeting directory days when it was all on paper, mid-90s. And, let me see, I was in Chicago and I called a phone number and the guy said, you turn left here and you turn right here. And at the end of the road, there's a water tower that looks like an Ovaltine jar. I'm taking notes. I'm like, I don't even, how you get goofy country directions. And, right there where there used to be a Walmart, you turn left. Right. You're like, oh, thanks. So I follow directions. I'm like, I don't know what Ovaltine looks like. What the hell? And I looked up and the water tower really looked like and said Ovaltine. It had been a Ovaltine factory 100 years ago, and they left the water tower up. I'm like, okay, he was right. Once or twice. And as you said with the book you bought in Ann Arbor, there's sometimes you get these funny little geographic associations to. I was in a meeting in Smyrna one time. You're living in Georgia these days. I was in a meeting in Smyrna, and a newcomer got up and said, "I can't no more do what I used to could." I went, that's going down in the books. That's one of the greatest things I've ever heard of. I don't care how long you've been sober, you can relate to that one. What's Georgia sobriety like? What are the meetings like there?
Well, since we've been through what we've been through collectively in the last couple of years, I haven't, since Zoom really got started. I go occasionally. I don't have like a home group there at the moment. I do make I make my regular meetings regularly, but they're mainly on Zoom.
Yeah, me too, I got to say. And there is a Zoom. We're here in Santa Fe. That's where we were. And thanks for coming into the studio today. I like doing these in person when I can. A meeting that started here immediately during the lockdown whenever that was, March of 20. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Tell you that story in a minute. We'll compare. It's like 9/11. Where were you when? So a meeting that began right here in Santa Fe and still goes on every morning is called Boozers in Bathrobes. And my pal Barry, you can find Barry on other episodes of this podcast. I think it's the name that attracts people when they're going down a list of 1 million names and they see Boozers in Bathrobes. And it's weekdays, 7 a.m. here, Mountain Time. And Mountain Time also sticks out like a sore thumb. Nothing's in Mountain. It's not LA. It's not New York. It's not even Chicago or Dallas. It's what? Right. And 8 a.m. Mountain Time. On weekends, it's got 300-400 attendees all over the world. I've spoken on there to the north of England, somewhere, Manchester or something like that. You get invited to do all kinds of great things online. So make this real quick. I got a dream gig. They do a lot of TV and movies here in Santa Fe and Albuquerque. And I got cast in a CBS pilot as a guitar player in a nothing bar in this pilot for a CBS series.
Blues Hammer.
It was a country band, but you're probably not far off. And so I remember this. It was the 11th, 2 days before Friday the 13th of March of 2020. I went into this studio in Albuquerque, a nice studio, and they brought in a big shot producer from Nashville, I think. Hi, how you doing? And we brought my stuff in. And the next musician who came in behind me a few minutes later started to introduce himself, and the producer said real innocently, goes, I think we're not supposed to shake hands. Like, I think we're supposed to, you'd heard that too? I'm like, you're right. It says in the news, don't shake hands. Okay, sorry. It was the very, very baby steps of COVID prevention and social distancing. We didn't have the hang of it at all. That was the 11th. On the 12th, and the session went like it went. We were pre-recording a playback for because we were going to have to mime to our own playing on the day. Thursday, the 12th, my agent called me and said, did you hear that all production is shut down in Los Angeles? I said, no, I had not heard that. She said, yeah, stand by, wait for more information, but right now it's watch and wait. Yeah, huh? We were scheduled to film like the next week. The next day is Friday the 13th. She's like, yeah, the check's coming, the job is gone. I'm like, what? She goes, oh, everything's done, so you're getting paid, but no gigs. So, that one, it's hard enough to get cast in a show, and especially one where I get to act and play guitar and a big dollar.
Right.
So it was just
Did it ever come back?
Yes. The next time I saw it, they were advertising it during the Super Bowl. So it came back in a big way, but not filmed here. Oh. And I already feel stupid for telling the story without saying millions of people died of COVID, and I take COVID super seriously. My family's super careful. So yes, it is not an epic planetary tragedy that I lost a pilot gig over it, but It's one of those things where I was in LA during the Rodney King riots, so-called, in 92, the summer before I got sober. And they're just, you remember where you were and what your little life was going through during these global events. What happened with you during that weird spring of 2020? Were you in a show? Were you doing shows then?
No, I wasn't.
Okay.
I wasn't playing much at the time, but I will tell you, it seemed like that was like the best, worst thing to ever happen to me on a spiritual kind of basis.
Hitting the brakes and
in a recovery basis.
Yes.
It allowed me to completely reset my life, and it gave me time, and I had no excuses not to do certain things that I had never really done before, like to really commit myself to meditation.
Oh, good.
To commit myself to, the other kind of self-care practices that I have incorporated. And because of that, now it's been 3.5 years about, I've been doing those like every day. I'm really, really consistent with this. And then, the online meeting started because I was living in Atlanta for a little bit, and then I moved to Athens, and I just never really found a home group there.
Athens, Georgia. No?
Yeah. So, some of the Zooms that we do together, I really connected with people on there. And I really, you know, at first it was a little strange, but then I really somebody pointed out, man, I like it because you can really look in everybody's eyes.
I absolutely love it. I hear, you know, people hate it. That's not me. I'm loving it.
No, I mean, yeah, that's what I hear too. My sponsor hates it. And, but you know, I really like it. And I do like that place where we can see each other and you can see each other's. So it just gave me this opportunity. And I was at a place in my life. My dad had just passed away. A relationship had ended. And so all those kind of things made me really dive into like, man, I need to take care of myself psychologically, and especially going through the COVID thing and all these things. And, you know, I felt that as alcoholics and, you know, our one day at a time philosophy, if you will, that we were kind of prepared for it better than most people.
Agree.
And so, I just, you know, I was still working my other job and that never stopped. And, you know, it allowed me time to kind of sharpen my stuff up with that. Yep. And I just, you know, like, Can
I circle back? You use the word meditation because you just made me think, as so often happens in recovery, that's just about the first thing to fall off the truck. If I start putting things on cruise control, the thing I'll forget to get around to is meditate, because it's easy for me to get it lost in the shuffle. But it sounds to me like you're in a steady groove in that way. Is that what
I am? Yeah.
You want to talk?
And
how's that for you? What's that like? What do you do?
Oh my gosh, it is nothing. Well, I do kind of like mindfulness practice, and I do a guided meditation with an app that I have. Mm-hmm. And because I had tried meditation before. I don't know if you've ever been in a meditation meeting where, you know, there's people in there. Nobody's telling anybody how to meditate. They just say, okay, we're going to close our eyes and I'm going to hit this timer. I've seen people like start crying and get up and leave the room. Oh. Because if you're not really taught how to meditate, you're just sitting there thinking with your eyes closed. Yeah. And
I heard somebody call it a nap that doesn't quite go anywhere.
Yeah, it can really be disturbing to people. See. You know, I've been taught by doing this, you know, this app by a really good teacher, you know, how to meditate. And I can just see that, right, I'm a lot more psychologically flexible now. I'm a lot less reactive. Because I do have some legitimate stressors in my life. They're just kind of not bouncing off of me, but I'm just able to like surf these kind of emotional roller coasters, you know, a lot better now. And I've got to say that is because of doing that. I was never really into it that much before, you know, in like a lot of years of sobriety. I heard you say in a meeting one time, if you're not praying and meditating, you're not
doing all 12 steps. You know what? I think we're going to call it on that. We're not going to beat it. Thank you for coming to Santa Fe and sitting down here. I just love you, Brad. It's so good to see you.
Love you too, Sherman. Thank you very much, buddy. All right.